All right, let's take one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Wednesday morning. Not too many accidents out there on the roadway as of right now. Do have one at Cedar Crest near Freedom, another one at Dutch Fork Road near Three Dog Road, and then another one at I-20 westbound at 378. But other than that, everything looking pretty okay on the roadways this morning. Sunny today, high's going to get up to 81 degrees. Tomorrow, some showers in the morning, breezy with a high of 68. And then Friday, it's going to be sunny with a high of 66. That's your traffic and weather on the early game. Nine o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you. It's an exciting day, Jack. Day one of spring practice. You're going to be out there in a little under 45 minutes to see things get rolling, and then it's a lot of football for the next month, culminating with the spring game.
Correction. Actually, exactly 43 minutes from now.
Exactly 43 minutes from now.
Because Shane Beamer likes to have his practices at the most specific of times. Like, I called my girlfriend Caroline this morning, and she's like, I think I told her the other day about this practice being at this specific time, and she's like, hey, you go. I think I called her 8:43, and she's like, hey, you go to practice in an hour, and I'm like, yeah, and look, I am excited.
Does he always nail the time to the T?
That's what it would seem like. I've noticed it since, I think, last year for sure. I can't remember it being like that before that. So it's been like this at least since last year. I know others could probably give better takes on it, but yeah, man, look, I'm looking forward to it. I don't think we're going to learn much today in watching these guys for 20 minutes because, number one, they're going to be stretching half the time. So when people ask, oh, who looked good? I'll tell you who looked good in stretching. I can tell you that. And who looked good walking around. And because, again, they're going to get into they're split off in groups and stuff. And they'll do a little bit of work, we hope. But, I'm not expecting too much today, but we'll have other opportunities to be out there. And throughout the spring, we'll really get a good taste of what's going on.
I guess when you have such a specific start time, because if you say something starts at let's say 9:45 or 10 o'clock or something like that, I think that's kind of looked at in a very general sense by a lot of people. But when you go with a very specific time that's not like a 0 or a 5, I think that almost kind of forces people to be more punctual, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. It's I don't know. I think I've seen a speed limit sign that says 21 miles an hour before, and it's that gets your attention. So no, you're right. I mean, we're so used to seeing things end with zeros and fives and stuff that seeing 9:43 is a very odd time that is going to stick in your brain.
Well, you're going to be heading out there here in a little bit. We'll talk plenty about that as we get closer to it, and also talk some Gamecock baseball as well as they were in action last night. But first, it is 9 o'clock. It means we've got to kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. Gamecock baseball was indeed in action last night over at Segra Park, taking on the College of Charleston. Weird game, by the way, if you did not get to see this. And if you needed to see all the action, go back and watch the 7th inning, because that pretty much tells you everything you need to know about this game.
Very strange game. I mean, just not strange in the sense of it was high scoring, a lot of different things happened, but I mean, it was a 1-1 game going into that 7th inning, and then everything kind of changed, and it became a lot more interesting. But, yeah, man, good win for South Carolina last night, though I don't think it was their best performance by any means this year. Still a lot, I think, that needs to be better, but hey, I mean, look, this is a good Charleston team you beat. You had to do it in comeback fashion, and good win for South Carolina going into a huge weekend series at Arkansas.
Well, like you said, this is a college Charleston team. They're number one in their conference coming in. A very good team when it comes to hitting the baseball in South Carolina, regardless of what the score was. And we look around the SEC, a lot of teams in the SEC last night did struggle with their midweek opponents. In fact, Tennessee finally lost a game this year by losing to East Tennessee last night. So having a one-run win against a team that's top of their conference, no shame in that. Again, as weird as that game was, and again, you're building a little bit more momentum heading into this weekend to take on a very, very tricky Arkansas team.
Yeah, it is going to be a really tall task to go in there and try to get a series win. Like, it's going to be very tough. I mean, Arkansas is a great program, top 3 in the country right now, and you know they've always been a great regular season team. But for South Carolina last night, getting that win, and look, the way they did it was just not pretty, because, you know, look, the bats just had struggled all night. I really am not a fan of this whole, you know, like, again, Paul Mainieri, it's his prerogative, is what it is. He likes to, you know, obviously be aggressive and, you know, swing early in the count and not take walks. That's fine and all, but when you're swinging at every first pitch, it seemed like last night. I mean, it was either the first, second, or third pitch. No one was patient at the plate, and it led to only scoring 1 run through 6 innings. And you're like, all right, this isn't working. You got to do something different, because this is a midweek team you're facing, and a lot of their arms as the game goes on aren't going to be able to command the zone as well as maybe like their top guys. And that's exactly what happened in the 7th inning when you give up the 2 runs, which we can get into that in a second here. You give up the 2 runs, and then the bottom of the inning, you finally start taking pitches. You draw the 2 bases loaded walks with 2 outs, and then you get the game-winning run on a balk. So, I mean, talk about very obscure way to win the game last night, as the bullpen dominated after that. But yeah, I mean, look, the approach was kind of just awful last night, and then that 7th inning, everything kind of changed.
You ever seen the game? It wasn't a walk-off, but be won via a balk before. I know Mainieri said it happened to him in the postseason when he was at LSU one time.
I'm trying to, I think there is an MLB game that I do recall, maybe a team winning on a balk, but I can't remember what game it was, but I'm sure it's happened before. But Mainieri remembering on the spot was kind of that was kind of funny.
I actually think I remember, if not watching that game, at least seeing the highlight of it, whenever that was a couple years ago, because it was so weird and obscure. But that's something you don't necessarily see ever. Balks in general are rare. I mean, you see them a couple times a season, but to see it in that situation, which, by the way, that pitcher was just completely flustered at that point in time. He couldn't find the zone to save his life, it seemed like. And to make that mistake that ended up costing his team the game there, that's a tough pill to swallow.
So I'm looking it up. The Kansas City Royals, they made history in 2023 with the second walk-off balk.
Balk-off.
A balk-off, yeah. So, oh my gosh, and let's see. Oh, yeah. All right, yeah. That's what it is. Yeah. So, but anyway, look, weird way to win the game last night, and just again, it's cool to be like Mainieri, like, even after the game last night, he said, I'm still not a fan of the walks and stuff. Like, that's how you won the game last night. Like, take pitches. It's okay to work the count, build it. That's okay too. And you got good results last night. And look, I understand against a team like Arkansas, like if the pitches are there, hit them, because that's a very good team right there with a good pitching staff. But man, you got to have a little bit more discipline at the plate, because whatever they're doing this season is just not. It hasn't been consistent.
You almost kind of wonder as well if the bats weren't just a little exhausted from all the hitting this past weekend against Oklahoma. That can certainly have an effect as well, because they did out hit the Sooners. They just didn't end up winning, 2 out of 3 games there. But again, a win's a win at the end of the day, which is something that, Maneri going back to a couple weeks ago when they beat Davidson in the midweek coming off of the Clemson series, that no matter what it looks like, you got another one in the win column. Kind of talking about these middle 8 games here in the middle of the season, how important they are. You at least notch one win to start that off.
Yeah, and I think, again, good win for them last night. Glad they got that big inning there because they definitely needed it from an offensive standpoint because, again, the numbers, you hit sub 200 with, runners on and runners in scoring position and 2 outs. You probably didn't deserve to win that game last night, but, hey, you got the win. And I think the pitching definitely carried the way. Obviously, Jarvis Evans is making a very good case to be in this weekend rotation. I think if Brandon Stone does not have a good outing again this weekend where he just gets kind of imploded like he did in the first inning last week, then I think you start to maybe consider putting Jarvis in the rotation or maybe give Matthew Becker a chance to start next Tuesday against North Carolina. And it's almost like like an audition to see, all right, it's either Evans or Becker, whoever gets the start in the rotation next weekend or something. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. But I do think the decision that Maneri made to take out Jarvis after the 6th inning was inherently fine, thinking back on it, because he was at 84 pitches through 6 innings and was just shoving. But the problem I have is that, and it's okay, I guess, but he brings in Zach Russell, right? After the game, he clarified he wanted to get Russell some experience pitching in these spots with a clean inning and stuff, not having to come into a jam or anything. That's fine. Russell struggles. Keep in mind, he had Ryder Guarino warming up. Gosh, since probably the second inning, it had been on and off warming up, and he was probably ready to go much sooner than Russell would have been. And then he brings in Aiden Palmer, and Palmer can't do much. And then you got bases loaded and nobody out. Runners on the corners and nobody out in a 3-1 game. And what do? You bring in Ryder Guarino finally, and he pitched excellent last night. Very good stuff. And then Marlott comes in after, finishes the deal. South Carolina's bullpen at the back end, those are the final 3 innings. They struck out 7 guys and limited the damage to keep South Carolina in the game. So, very good from those guys, but again, I just think you're trying to win baseball games. I understand you want to get guys experience, but I think, I don't know. Russell's been good this year too, so I don't know what you do exactly, but Guarino's been awesome this year, and good to see him pitch well last night.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for Guarino to come in there and be able to get, because there was no outs at that point in time, and then struck out 3 out of the next 4 batters. They did have an intentional walk mixed in there as well. So kind of got the game back under control. And then again, like you said, Marlott able to come in there and kind of shut things down. But yeah, Jarvis Evans been very impressed with him in the midweek. And again, if things continue to kind of scuffle on the weekends, like you said, he could very well find himself in one of those spots here before too long.
No, he definitely deserves it. He's been pitching really well over the last, Citadel was an insanely good outing. And I honestly think these last, most this season, he's been pitching very well. And I know it's midweek games, but he did it against a very good Charleston lineup yesterday, right? He limited the damage best he could, and he pitched well. And so I think at some point he's going to find his way into this rotation, whether it is someone falling out, whoever it might be. Eventually, I think he comes in there.
Let's hear a little bit of what Coach Maneri had to say after the game coming up next. By the way, tonight, at 6 o'clock right here on the game, Carolina Calls, first edition with Coach Maneri here on the game. You'll be able to hear what he had to say, not only about last night's game, but also looking ahead to Arkansas and the tough series they have coming up with Tennessee, as well as they are navigating the difficulty that is the SEC slate so far. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher will hear from Coach Maneri. Also, start looking into spring practice and maybe recap Pro Day yesterday as well. Coming up next, it is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack here on the game. It's out right here telling you once again about our friends over at Twin Peaks. We are in the month of March, and that big tournament officially gets rolling coming up tomorrow. And it's time for you to register for the Dos Million Dollar Bracket Challenge. You can sign up at TwinPeaksBracketChallenge.com and fill out your bracket before the tournament tips off coming up tomorrow. And there for your chance to win $2 million and more epic prizes, including a $50 gift card to the top bracket from each and every lodge. And while the tournament's going on, there's no better place to park yourself than at Twin Peaks. TVs as far as the eye can see. Of course, tons and tons of delicious food, and you can't pass up on those 29-degree draft beers. Well, by the way, you can join Terry Ford out at Twin Peaks in the Vista in the next 2 days while the tournament is getting rolling for those first couple of rounds, and hang out with him as take in all the great basketball action going on in the month of March with our friends at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's our Ed Jack Belcher along with you on your Wednesday, recapping last night's 4-3 win for South Carolina baseball, taking down College of Charleston. By the way, I thought it was interesting after the game that Benary said that this is something you're going to see a little bit more of. I know it had been a while since they had played in the regular season, and he said that expect them to be coming into Founders Park coming up next year, and this probably be a routine thing in the years going forward.
Yeah, it's. I'm glad this is something that will continue moving forward. However, I will say, and I'm glad this is going to Founders next year, and then they'll make the return trip to, well, I guess if you want to call it a return trip technically, to Charleston in the fall for another scrimmage. That's great and all. I will say, though, last night I was very disappointed with the crowd attendance. Like,
Looked pretty light.
For being such a, it's not even just because of South Carolina or anything and their recent struggles. I think it's also just the fact that, like, this is an event that we've known about for months now, and it's been promoted and stuff. I mean, it's just, it's crazy to see how limited the crowd was last night. I mean, I get it's a Tuesday at 6:30, but, like, I mean, these are two good teams playing, and, like, I mean, I'm sure this game is not going to be at Segra again anytime soon just because of how light the crowd was throughout the night.
What was the reason for having it at Segra?
I don't know exactly. I think the thought process probably is, and it's stupid because it's like Founders is right down the block. I'm sure Charleston probably wanted to have this be a neutral site game, kind of like what it was for
Quote unquote neutral.
Yeah, neutral. But like, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, there's no real good site to put this game at for a neutral site, unless it's going to be in Charleston or in Columbia.
You could meet like almost halfway in Orangeburg or something.
Yeah, but where's
go play at SC State?
Yeah, go play there. I mean, you probably could have filled it up last night with the limited crowd you had. I don't even know what the final attendance was last night.
It looked pretty light on TV.
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up, but man, that was that was very disappointing just to see. I mean, look. I had people, like, in my mentions last night talking about how, it's because the team stinks and all this and that. And I'm like, they lost a series. And I don't know. It's just, I don't get it. But.
Yeah, I don't think we're to the point where people are jumping off the bandwagon yet. Now, look, if you go out there and get swept by Arkansas this weekend and drop 2 out of 3 against Tennessee next weekend or something along those lines, where you're staring at being 1-8 or 2-7 to start conference play, then yeah, we can have a conversation about people starting to lose interest, because that's gonna be a difficult hole to dig yourself out of. But I don't think we're to the point there just yet. Here's Coach Maneri after the game last night talking about the importance of picking up a win in the midweek ahead of playing Arkansas this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no dummy, okay? Well, I guess that's up for debate, actually. But, you like to win these close ones in the middle of the week because, the weekend is going to be an unbelievable challenge. We're playing one of the top teams in the country, and, listen, our kids I thought they played great the whole weekend against Oklahoma. They really did. We deserved better. It's nobody's fault but our own. I mean, we just didn't do what it took to win on Sunday. But I actually thought we outplayed Oklahoma all weekend. We out-hit them every game. Our ERA was lower. We made less errors. I mean, I thought we played really good baseball the whole weekend. When I look at it and say we went 1-2, I'm like, how the heck did that happen? But, when you get to a one-run game, at the end, you got to throw the ball over the plate. We didn't in the 7th inning, and they were able to tie the game, and then we didn't make the plays in the 9th inning when we had a chance to put it away. So we have nobody to blame but ourselves. But I really felt we played well all weekend, and so the confidence of the team is good. It's just, you just got to be able to put behind you those negative things that happen, the adversity that happens, because there's no do-overs. You just have to learn to put it behind you, learn from it, and then get after it. We didn't play exceptionally great tonight. Jarvis did, and we got a couple of hits, but the kids' command obviously was a big factor in the outcome of tonight's game.
And we'll get into the specifics of this Arkansas team a little bit later on in the week, but it goes without saying Arkansas is a very tough team to beat on the road. They're averaging about 6 home losses a year over the past handful of seasons, so it's very rare that they lose, in their own ballpark. And yes, technically you did go on the road to Doug Kingsmore Stadium a couple weeks ago for that Friday night game against Clemson, and yeah, you've been to like Winthrop and stuff like that, but this is your first true road test away from the state of South Carolina, where you're really going to be facing a true away crowd. Could there be a handful of Gamecock fans there? Sure, but it's going to be 98% Arkansas fans there that you're going to have to deal with. They're going to be rowdy, and obviously they're smart. They understand their baseball, and are going to be showing up for the series. And I heard you and Stuart Lake talking about it yesterday. Weather's going to be nice. You're probably going to have a really good turnout out there. I'm interested to see how Maneri's crew handles their first true road test this weekend.
Me too. I mean, they got to take a game. It's as simple as that. You cannot come back here let alone, you have to go on the road to Charlotte for the North Carolina game next week on Tuesday, but you cannot come back for that Tennessee series getting swept, let alone going 0-4 over these next 4 games. You have to find a way to win one of the games here at Arkansas. I think you definitely can steal a game, and that's fine. Just don't get swept on the road. That's the key there. And then you go play North Carolina, and you hopefully beat them, and that's a ranked win right there.
Yep.
And you're feeling like, all right, you didn't win the series at Arkansas, but that's such a tough place to go play. And I've heard nothing but good things about it. I'm excited to get out there. I know the fans are rowdy and whatnot, so I know it's going to be tough for South Carolina. I don't expect them to win this series just because it's winning on the road in the SEC in any sport. It's awfully difficult. And then you look at next week, Tennessee's coming to town, and they just lost last night.
They did.
With their number 1 ranking. So it is possible to beat the Base Vols, but I think for South Carolina, you got to take this thing one game at a time, and hopefully managing the pitching right, hitting comes through a little bit. You can maybe sneak your way into 2 wins, but I think getting 1 is definitely ideal for South Carolina.
And again, this stretch of 8 games, which started last night with College of Charleston and wraps up with Tennessee, a week from this weekend, it's going to tell us a lot about what this team's going to be. Because again, those 8 games are going to swing your season one way or the other. If you can find a way to come out of that, at 500-ish, 4-4, you're probably feeling okay. If you go out there and, the only games that you win are last night against Charleston and then 1 game maybe on the road this weekend against Arkansas, you lose to North Carolina and get swept by Tennessee, and you're sitting at 2-6 over those 8 games, then we're in a little bit of trouble because that's, again, a hard hole to dig yourself out of. So, again, a lot of the season hinges on what happens over the next week and a half.
Honestly, man, if you can just go out here, you already took care of business last night. That was step 1. If you can find a way to just win 3 more games over the next, you got Arkansas, steal a game there, hopefully. North Carolina, hopefully you beat them, and then because you've had pretty good success against them. And then next weekend, find a way to take a game against Tennessee. Just don't get swept in either of these series against Arkansas or Tennessee. And I don't think people are going to be mad either way, but
sure.
I think the realistic people out there aren't going to be super ticked off that South Carolina lost series to Arkansas and Tennessee, 2 of the top 3 teams in the country that are just leaps and bounds better than South Carolina right now. If they can just avoid getting swept and show some life, kind of like how they played like they did against Oklahoma, I think they're going to be in the series. It's just, what do you do in those critical moments that you lost the series because how does that change in this weekend and going into next week too?
Again, we'll talk more about Arkansas as it gets a little bit closer later on in the week, but you got to hit the road, get over to spring practice. We'll get you on the phone lines coming up next and start previewing this a little bit as well as talk about what happened at Pro Day yesterday. It is the Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game.
Everyone knows that AAA Heating and Air has the best HVAC replacement options in the Midlands with their guaranteed financing, no payment or interest for 12 months, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty. They're hard to beat when you need a new system, but did you know they also have great deals for repairs? That's right. If your system is broken and you're strapped for cash, AAA Heating and Air can help. They'll get your repairs done with payment options for up to 12 months and no credit check required. So if you are the homeowner, all you need is a valid bank account. That's it. That's all you need. So don't wait. Call AAA Heating and Air today and get your comfort back on track. AAA Heating and Air. Comfort you can trust.
And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, still here in the Herndon Chevrolet studios. Jack Belcher has transitioned over to Love Chevrolet phone lines because he is en route to spring practice, which is set to start exactly in 10 minutes. Again, we'll see how punctual Beamer is with getting it started for day number one. But, man, excited to see and learn about this new team. Again, we've been talking about it on and off for the past handful of months since the season officially came to an end. A lot of questions are going to have to be answered this spring. We have a lot of questions going into spring, but, Jack, I don't think we're going to be able to answer all of them by the time this next month is over.
No, I mean, definitely not. If we're able to answer every question that we have going into the end of spring, I think that's more so a problem. Well, yeah, I think it's a problem more so than anything, just because I think we always need to learn something new, right? It's never going to be a perfect picture. Like it's going to take time to to learn everything about this team. Like, we know the obvious, like, okay, Lenore Sellers is your QB1 right now, and some other things like that. But there's a lot that is unknown about this team. Like, how do you replace 3 starting offensive linemen on the interior? What do you do about the receiver position? Who's the top receiver going into the season? How do you replace so much talent on the defense? Like, that's stuff that will certainly not be answered by the end of the spring here. And that's something that will probably be answered as the regular season begins here in a few months.
Yeah, and again, Coach Beamer talks so much about competition, and everything's an open competition. And I was even surprised to a point when he talked about it the other day in his press conference that quarterback's not a competition. Because we know Lenore Sellers, and we know Lenore Sellers is the starter, but I even figured he would say, well, even that's, up in the air. We don't know. Everybody's going to have an equal opportunity. But besides that, every position is up for grabs, and so many battles going to be going on this spring. What one position stands out to you above the rest that you're particularly interested in? Again, we're not going to be able to figure it out necessarily in the next month, but as the offseason rolls along, the position battles going on.
Yeah, I think the one area I think probably is honestly the offensive line. I think that is a huge thing because you have to be able to protect your quarterback. Like, if you're not able to protect 16, that's a problem. And look, we saw it at the beginning of last season that South Carolina's protection on the front was just not good enough. I mean, Sellers had to scramble for his life more times than not. But as the season wore on, you got a comfortable offensive line that played cohesively as a unit, and that's what you need this year. And it's going to take time to build that, I think, with 3 new starters coming on the offensive line, however that ends up shaking out. But I'm very interested to see what that looks like today. And again, just because the starting 5 looks like that on the line today, assumedly we see that, then it doesn't mean that's what it's going to look like when we get to the first game of the year. Everything is constantly changing.
Well, I was going to say, and I know Wes has dubbed that the depth chart drill, where you kind of see who's rolling with the 1s and 2s and so on and so forth. But if there was any depth chart drill that probably, I wouldn't say would be meaningless, but one that you can't put as much stock in, it's definitely the first one for spring practice.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, people, like I said at the beginning of the show, man, people are going to ask, what's the depth chart look like? What's this look like? Who's looking good? All this and that. It is so it's definitely hard to tell who's looking good just based off the 20 minutes of practice that we get to see, because, again, it's mostly them stretching and going through the beginning of their practice day. But if we do hopefully get to see any starting combinations and stuff, just realize it's not solidified. It's day 1 of practice, and what the team looks like now will certainly not be the same once we get to the season opener. Just because, again, the transfer portal reopens again, things happen, guys aren't even on campus right now, maybe some freshmen. I mean, there's a lot that's going to change by the time we get to fall camp.
Yeah, and going back to the offensive line conversation we were having a second ago, I really kind of only feel confident in saying one spot. I don't want to say it's solidified because it's still going to be a competition, but I feel pretty strongly that Josiah Thompson is likely going to be your left tackle once again. But as you mentioned, replacing everybody on the interior of your offensive line, then I can't sit here and confidently say that Casey Henry is going to be your right tackle because he certainly struggled quite a bit last year. And for a guy that's been on campus for several years at this point, I know he's been bitten by the injury bug quite a few times. I don't necessarily know if he's in the pole position for that right tackle spot right now.
I think you're right. I think Josiah is definitely the only guy that should be able to be starting going into the season, confidently, because he had a pretty good year last year. Other than that, I was not super impressed with Casey Henry either. And, he's a very smart football dude, knows what he's talking about. Nice dude, but, he just got blown by so many times last year and just did not look particularly great on the line. So I think everything is up for competition. I would like to see maybe some of the guys that maybe didn't play a ton last year, like Tree Babalade and Tro Ball, who, when they were freshmen, they were starting consistently for South Carolina. And yes, I know injuries kind of played a factor in that. But, hey, I mean, look, they are now juniors for South Carolina. So it's going to be very interesting to see what their progression looks like, because I think they could definitely earn back some starting spots here over these next few weeks and going into the months ahead.
And there's a lot of guys that are going to be in the mix for these offensive line starting spots that have been on campus for a while. Again, Thompson and Henry did start a year ago. You mentioned Bob Bilotti. You mentioned Ball, who got a lot of action back in 2023. Jatavius Shivers is a name we hear about a lot that has been around for a while. Marquis Anderson is somebody else that's been around for a while and could certainly be in the mix for some of these starting jobs. And this is kind of where you see where the development factor takes over and the coaching staff kind of figuring out who the right guys are going to be for those spots. And again, you have, sitting here in March now, you have 5-6 months to figure this kind of stuff out. But it's going to be one of those position groups that we're going to be watching even more closely than some of the others in this offseason.
And the one thing about the line, man, as we all well and know, it's something that doesn't constantly change throughout the year. You like to have continuity. I think that's ultimately why things worked out so well for that offensive line as the year progressed, because it was always the same starting five every single time. So I'll be very interested to see what that five looks like and, kind of how it shakes out, because I think you do probably need to find your best five and just stick with it.
Yep. So before you head in there, what exactly, I know you said you're probably going to see a lot of stretching, but what do you guys kind of get to observe at these practices besides guys just warming up?
Yeah, in the past, man, and again, it just depends. Typically, we'll see them break off into their position groups, and maybe they'll do a little bit of work. Like I remember they've done stuff like, special teams work where they're working on lining up and stuff. It's not. I don't think it's going to be anything too insane today. I'd be kind of surprised a little bit if we saw anything like them getting into like an offensive huddle or anything. But I think they're probably going to go through some positional work, maybe, hopefully, and do stuff like that. So we'll see. Again, it's only 20 minutes, and they're pretty good about getting us out of there when the clock strikes that 20-minute mark. So we'll see. But, again, first practice of the year, looking forward to being out there. I think it's going to hopefully be a good time.
Don't you kind of wish you were covering the team during the Spurrier days when anybody could just walk up and watch practice?
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, look, I hate it, but it's only 20 minutes. Like, that's really nothing in the grand scheme of things. And the fact that we on Gamecock Central write stories off this and stuff, like, I mean, look, it's more so about kind of just figuring out who's where, I think, today. And then once we kind of get towards that last open practice where I think it's like 6 periods, that's a longer time, like 30, 35, 40 minutes, that's when we'll actually get to really see a lot of the stuff. So it's going to be a little bit of a build-up, kind of like a TV series or a movie. You don't see a lot at the beginning, I think, and then you kind of, as the spring goes on, we'll see a bit more.
Well, practice set to roll here in about 60 seconds. We'll let you go, and we'll follow along on Gamecock Central. I know you guys have some stuff on the Insiders Forum, reacting to it live as it happens. Wes and Chris will come in here and talk about what you guys see, and we'll get some of your thoughts coming up tomorrow morning.
Yeah, definitely go to GamecockCentral.com for all that info that you just mentioned. And, yeah, man, I'm looking forward to the spring and seeing what it brings for a football team that is building off a 9-4 season.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow, Jack.
All right. See you, Tyler.
Jack Beltry out there about to walk in to day number 1 of spring practice out there at the football complex. And again, we're off and running for the next month. It's going to culminate with the spring game coming up on April the 18th on that Friday night. And hopefully we'll learn a lot over the course of the next month about what this team's going to be in 2025, and hopefully something good enough to be able to replicate the 9-win season, if not improve on that from a year ago. Before we head into this break, as we've been doing since yesterday, and we'll be doing all the way up until tomorrow, we got to give away more teams for our bracket contest. Just like yesterday, call now at 803-404-6100. Caller number 6 will be assigned a team, and caller number 8 will be assigned a team. You hold on to that team, and if that team is able to run the table and win the national championship here in a couple weeks, you will win Gamecock baseball season tickets for the remainder of the season. So again, call right now, 803-404-6100. You'll be assigned a team if you're caller number 6 or caller number 8. And then we'll come back and we'll wrap up today's edition of the Extra Point, hour number 1 of the Extra Point on your Wednesday. Tyler Head along with you here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's our head flying solo with you for the next couple minutes. Jalen Tart will jump in with me here for the top of the hour, and we'll dive into all that's going on with March Madness because we got our first couple of first four games last night, and of course the bracket gets started properly coming up tomorrow, which we'll talk plenty about tomorrow as well. Next Friday, by the way, don't forget, the annual 107.5 The Game Spring Golf Classic makes its return this year in partnership with the Lexington County Gamecock Club. Going to be out at Charlwood Golf Club in West Columbia. If you want to sign up your foursome, give Charlwood a call at 803-755-2000. We're going to have the par 5 golf ball cannon out there once again. Also going to be giving away baseball and football season tickets to 2 lucky winners. Also, special guest is going to be Basketball Hall of Famer and former Gamecock great Alex English. So again, if you want to take part in the 107.5 The Game Spring Golf Classic, give Charlwood a call at 803-755-2000. You know, listening to me here on the game, I am always down to talk some college football video games. Of course, last year we got the much anticipated return of the college football video game franchise with CFB 25, which was a resounding success, sold a ton of copies. I can tell you how many tens of hundreds of hours I logged on that, last year, and playing Dynasty mode and all those kind of things, and can't wait for College Football 26 to come out a little bit later on this year. It was just the other week when we got the what we anticipate is the cover of the deluxe edition, which featured a lot of faces around college football, including the likes of Dylan Stewart here from South Carolina, Bryce Underwood, who's yet to even take a spring snap up there at Michigan, that's already on the cover, as well as guys like Caleb Downs and so on and so forth, some of the stars of college football being represented on the cover of that game, as well as coaches. Now, coaches have historically never been a part of the college football video games, and I don't know if that's an indication that they're going to be this year, but it certainly leads you to believe that that is going to be the case. Yesterday, Chris Vanini of The Athletic reported something else interesting about this year's edition of the game, is increased payouts to players. So, and when the game went away with the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit over a decade ago, EA Sports said, hey, if we ever get in a position where we can pay the student athletes directly, we'll bring the game back. Well, of course, NIL became a thing in 2021, and now we're in a position where those athletes can be compensated for their full name, image, and likeness being a part of the game. Last year, the athletes were given $600, which that's a very good sum of cash for anybody, whether you're a superstar player with a ton of NIL or a guy that doesn't have really much of anything in the NIL space. It was good that all those players, and outside of Arch Manning, who eventually did end up in the game, I'm not aware of anybody else that really opted out of it. Because again, $600. Why would you pass that up? Well, this year, again, according to Chris Vanini of The Athletic, those payments are going to increase. They're going to go from $600 to $1,500 because, again, this game sold exceptionally well a year ago, which means that EA Sports is tying up roughly about $16.2 million, I believe, in just paying the student athletes alone to feature them in the game. And again, they're anticipating they're going to make that money and much more back in the sales of this game, obviously, to be able to justify paying the student athletes that much. But it is good to see this game thriving, right? Again, a lot of excitement with its return a year ago. This year, you're obviously going to have a whole new crop of players with freshmen coming in and obviously seeing where guys transfer and all those kind of things. I imagine Leroy Seller's rating is going to be pretty high this year compared to last year, where he obviously came in as an unknown to a lot of people. I'd be interested to see if Nick Harbor is still, once again, one of just the freaks on the game like he was a year ago that garnered so much attention and really created even more buzz for him last year because of the video game. Like, we obviously knew locally about him and what his potential was and his freakish athleticism, but I feel like nationally people pointed to what happened with the video game and his overall rating, speed, and all that kind of stuff as what his potential should be in the actual world of college football, and that's neat to see, and we'll see what those ratings look like when the game comes out later this year. I imagine it'll be a July release, much like last year's game was. But excited for that, and I really hope this is paving the way for the return of other college games like March Madness as well as college baseball. I know there's college teams being featured in MLB The Show this year, which that game did come out about a week ago, and it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. Apparently, the College World Series portion, which you can't play at South Carolina, is a very, very small, like 2-3 game part of your road to the show mode. So maybe that's a stepping stone for college baseball coming back to the consoles, but definitely was hoping to be a little bit more for this year's edition of the show, but not the case. But I know 2K is entertaining the idea, I believe, of bringing back a college basketball video game, which I would certainly be in favor for. The old March Madness games from back in the day were very, very fun. That'll do it for hour number 1 of the Extra Point. Speaking of March Madness, we'll dive fully in to the chaos that's already begun last night. Coming up next here on the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on the game. And welcome back in hour number 2. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jalen's Hart hanging out with him as he does each and every Wednesday. A little more excitement this week. We're in March.
Yeah.
It's March Madness.
Yeah, it's already beginning. Exciting 2 games last night. More to come. And, yeah, a lot has happened. Baseball picked up a big win yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
What a week. What a week it's been for not only just for South Carolina, but just for sports in general. It's a lot of buzz going on about Aaron Rodgers. The Vikings not wanting him.
We technically started the MLB season yesterday
in Tokyo.
In Tokyo with the Dodgers and the Cubs playing. That's not opening day to me, though. And, I get it while they're playing it outside of that because the teams got to travel back and get back on time and adjusted before actually starting the season proper. It's neat that it's happening. I know they did it last year, I believe. I want to say it was the Dodgers and maybe the Padres playing in an Asian country. I don't know if it was Japan or where it was.
But Tokyo is legitly that's different. And Ohtani got his first home run.
Yep.
Saw it this morning.
Very cool.
So, yeah, it's just a lot going on, and it's not going to stop until June.
Yeah, pretty much. Is March the best sports month?
I personally
it's got to
think
be
so.
up there, right?
I personally think so. You got March Madness. You got March Madness, the tournament, and the Final Four.
Technically, the Final Four is in April. Technically.
Well, that kind of goes into it. So the whole, the NBA is entering the critical stage of, which team is going to have a good month of April going into May with the playoffs. Hockey, being hockey for what it is. And typical offseason for college football. Well, the spring game.
Spring game would be in April.
April as well. Okay. So we could argue that April could be.
April
could be up there.
You can make an argument for April. I always say that October is probably the best overall sports month because you're in the thick of college football, the NFL. You've got the
MLB,
Major League Baseball postseason going on. In NBA starts in October, even though those games don't really matter at that point in time. But you kind of have an overload of things happening in October. And again, meaningful baseball, huge football games, all that kind of stuff. I would probably put that at number 1. But March can make a strong argument for somewhere in the top 3, I feel like.
I agree. I think March Madness alone, knowing it's very unpredictable, that alone gets a sports fan tuned in to watch to see what would happen.
Well, we technically kind of started March Madness last night with a wild one between Alabama State and St. Francis.
Seconds left, and here we go. This is where dreams are made. We're going for it all. Simpson, home run play, the deflection. Oh! The layup! 0.7 seconds left. Alabama State in front.
If that is a precursor for what's to come, we're in for a very, very fun tournament. That, again, Alabama State earning their way into the field of 64, but taking down St. Francis of Pennsylvania 70-68 on quite literally a Hail Mary of a play. Threw it down, and just like in football, where you have all the guys jumping up for the end zone, ball's able to escape out kind of the back there, and then Alabama State's able to get that layup to pick up the victory.
I did not see this live. When I saw the ball leave his hand out for the inbound pass, I did not know what was going to happen. And then when I saw that one of the Alabama State players caught the ball and literally put an easy layup in as time was about to expire, it was just miraculously crazy because watching the highlights, it was back and forth the last 2 minutes. And shout out to Tony Matlock, the head coach for Alabama State. He previously coached at South Carolina State University for getting their first NCAA tournament win. Long time coming. They did not finish first in the SWAC in the regular season.
Yeah, they won the tournament, though.
Yes. Southern did. Southern was predicted to go all the way because they had a very strong season. Very, very interesting season for Southern, but they lost.
Which, by the way, it bothers me that tournament champions have to play in the play-in game. I like the play-in games, but you have earned your right to be in the NCAA tournament by virtue of winning your conference. And because they deem that your conference is not as strong as the other conferences, you have to play your way in. That's not right to me. I feel like playing games should only feature at-large teams.
I agree. I think for what we saw with North Carolina and San Diego State, which is kind of like, we could get into it in another time about North Carolina getting in, but that was an example of a game of an at-large bid. For the women's side, I would argue Norfolk State won. They won the MEAC. And they did not get a play. They're not getting a play-in game. They're a 13 seed playing a 4 seed in Maryland this weekend. But I agree. I think having champions, you winning your tournament champions, you should not have a win-in game, a play-in game. I should call it.
Yeah,
to get into the tournament.
No, that's how I've always felt. Because, again, by winning your conference tournament, you should have earned yourself into the field 64, and we should take all these other teams that didn't do that and put them in the play-in round, and we'll get into some more of that here in just a second. By the way, Alabama State, by winning that play-in game against St. Francis, now takes on the number 1 overall seed in Auburn. So I don't think it's going to be a long tenure for them, for the Hornets in the NCAA tournament, but they can at least say they won one game, right?
Yeah, that could be interesting, too, because, I mean, they're both Alabama teams.
Yeah, and I believe that they'll be in Lexington, I believe. For that part of the bracket.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and look, there's no home court advantage really anywhere in the tournament. But Auburn's so dang good.
Yeah.
I don't see Auburn tripping up and being the third number 1 seed to fall.
My fear is Kentucky. Once again, my fear is Kentucky this year. I know they have a new coach. This is their, kind of their first time going in, but they have a daunting history of being a 3 or 2 seed and getting out in the first round.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. Again, Alabama State earning their way into the field of 64 last night with a thrilling victory over St. Francis of Pennsylvania. On the other side of things, the second First Four game, not quite as competitive as North Carolina completely dismantles San Diego State 95-68. Obviously, the conversation earlier on in the week was North Carolina and whether they deserve to be in the tournament or not. And look, I'm fully convinced that the brand that is North Carolina was the tipping point that allowed them to get in compared to the West Virginias and Indianas and all the other teams. But that being said, this is a team that is still capable of making things happen. But does winning last night justify their place in being in the field?
No. I think you have to get to at least the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8.
Okay.
To justify that. My thought on, I have not spoken out about this. I personally think they did not get enough quad 1 wins throughout their schedule.
They had 1.
Yes, that's not enough. I think they were in games that they were supposed to win. I think their play spoke to not what it was at the beginning of the season in the middle, where they went on an 8-game winning streak before the tail end of their conference play. They looked really, really connected and really good against those type of teams. But my fear is they didn't have enough quad 1 wins. That is kind of the question mark. But from what I saw last night, if they played the way that they played last night throughout the tournament, I still have a case of them being a hard out. I see them upsetting Ole Miss if they can win their round of 64, possibly. But they're going to be a very interesting team to watch. A lot of people have said that it was a disgrace that they got in. If they earned their way to get in, and I think they took it very personal yesterday. They heard the message very loud and clear, and they took it personal, winning almost by 30 points.
They went out there, put on a great display last night. That's for sure. I'm interested to see what they're going to be able to do once the tournament gets started proper. Coming up tomorrow. I do think it's interesting, and this goes back to what we talked about the other day in terms of them just getting in the tournament in general. Now you got somebody to root against. You know what I mean? Sports are made better when you have somebody that you're going up against, when you're somebody, the villain, so to speak. And look, North Carolina being a blue blood and getting the benefit of the doubt essentially for getting in the tournament, and obviously their AD being on the selection committee, which certainly had its influence. I imagine a lot of people, you don't have to be an Ole Miss fan to tune into that game hoping to see North Carolina lose. By the way, North Carolina is favored in that game. By the way, they're a 1.5-point favorite over Ole Miss in the opening round of the 64-team bracket. And again, 11 seeds have had a lot of success. We'll get into that here in just a moment. But I think a lot of people want to see North Carolina fail. A lot of people were rooting for San Diego State last night because they didn't think that North Carolina deserved to be in there. So now the farther they go, the more that hate and vitriol I think is going to build up.
And I think the critics of the outside world of North Carolina being in is probably going to fuel them to have a magical run. Me personally, I am a North Carolina Tar Heel fan. I love the Tar Heels. Been loving them since elementary school. I'm going to go to the death until, if they win the national championship, they win it. If they don't win it, they don't win it. But I'm excited to see this run as a personal Tar Heel fan. I don't know how long it's going to last, but to see R.J. Davis go out this way, not really going out, but on his last ride with the Tar Heels, I'm interested to see how far he's going to take this team, because in big games like this, he has not shown up throughout the years. So this is the biggest moment of his young career going into it. And I don't know if the head coach is proud for North Carolina. The name is slipping off of my head right now, but he's been the talk of the town too for them, of them being on the hot seat.
Yeah, Hubert Davis.
Yes, Hubert Davis. Thank you.
Getting into the tournament helps them out a lot, because if they missed the tournament this year,
he would have been gone. He would have been gone.
Very likely could have been gone.
Yeah.
Speaking of coaches that were on the hot seat, Rodney Terry out of Texas was somebody that was flirting with the hot seat as the season came to an end. Texas, not quite as controversial as North Carolina, did get a spot in the tournament as the 14th team in the SEC. They do have to play in the play-in round coming up tonight, taking on Xavier to determine who's going to take that number 11 seed. If Texas loses, do we still say the SEC got 14 teams in or 13? Because they wouldn't have made the 64-team bracket. They would have just been in the first four.
No. I would say no. I mean, yes, you got in, but you have to play. It's a play-in.
Yeah.
You got to play to get in. If you didn't get in, you didn't get in. That's just my answer on that.
Yep, I agree. There's been talks of expanding the tournament, and that's gaining a lot of steam. And I'm not saying I'm okay with it, but if you expand the play-in round where there's still integrity to the actual 64-team bracket, I'm more okay with that.
Okay.
If you say, okay, well, instead of 4 teams playing in the play-in, we're going to have 8 or 12 teams, that's fine, as long as you're still preserving the field of 64. Where, again, you have a bunch of play-ins for the lower seeds, but, the number 1 seeds aren't suddenly playing 18 or 19 seeds or something like that. Like, if you want to expand it, expand the play-in round, that's fine with me, and still keep the integrity of what the field of 64 is, because I think, and we've been doing it since 1985, I think a 64-team final bracket is perfect.
I agree. I think expanding it will be nice. Don't expand the play-in. I think having two games on Tuesday, 2 games on Wednesday, I like that. But what if you could add 3, or you could add 4 where the games start earlier in the day?
Or, because, look, we talk about Thursday and Friday being the best 2 days of the entire tournament, because you just get wall-to-wall basketball, you get upsets galore and all that kind of stuff. Why can't Tuesday and Wednesday be the same way? What if you had, instead of starting at 6 o'clock last night, what if it started at 12 yesterday? What if you had just games all day long on Tuesday and Wednesday, all play-in games, so all those teams are playing for the right to be one of those lower seeds, and then the bracket or the tournament starts proper on Thursday as normal?
Or what you could do to add both the women's and men's, you just do it, have it on the same. You could have it interchangeable where you have basketball for both the men's and the women's. You can bring in the college world from the men's and the women's basketball side. Bam, there you go. You got your moneymaker right there.
Look, it's going to make money, so they're going to expand it at some point. Like I said, if you're going to expand it, keep it to the play-in round and keep the integrity of the 64-team bracket. That's how I'd like to see it.
My only concern is, what if you run into a situation for fans to say this team doesn't deserve to get in? How would you decide that?
Well,
expand?
At that point, we're talking about teams 77, 78, 79. You lose your argument at that point. In fact, Team 69 loses its argument in a lot of ways, like West Virginia did this year. We'll dive into how to fill out your brackets and what the numbers say about who's going to be successful in this year's tournament. Coming up next, it is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jalen Tart on your Wednesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jalen Tart along with you here on your Wednesday on The Game. Coming up in a little bit, I'll give you another chance to enter the 107.5 Game bracket contest, where again, you'll call in, and if you're caller number 6 or caller number 8, you'll get assigned a team. And if that team is able to go all the way and win the national championship, you'll win season tickets for baseball for the remainder of the season. So again, listen a little bit later on the hour for your next chance to be a part of the 107.5 bracket contest. Speaking of brackets, have you filled yours out yet?
I have not. I plan on doing that today. Doing both the men's and the women's today. I'm only doing one.
Okay, I was going to ask, what's your philosophy? You're one bracket?
I'm one.
One bracket?
One.
I typically am. Occasionally, I'll do a chaos bracket. Like, because you have your main bracket, and, there's all those, bracket contests you can enter to win millions of dollars if you get it right, which nobody's ever got it right. So, don't hold your breath expecting that to happen. But I love the chaos of March Madness, as everybody does. And you also, I feel like, can have a secondary, chaos bracket where you just go with the extremes of, all right, well, every 12 is going to be to 5, every 11 is going to be 6, and all those kind of things, and have a number 1 seed lose to a 16 or something along those lines, just to see what might happen, right?
Yeah, I like unexpected endings and, chaotic endings, whether if it's the higher seed beating the lower seed by 1 point with a miraculous moment, or a 16 beating a 1 seed, which could happen. But I'm all for it. I think for me, I go off of who has the best momentum from the end of the season going into the tournament, and from the tournament, whoever won their tournament or their league going into March Madness. I do like Auburn. Auburn and Duke, to me, are my 1 and 2 to win it. I just don't know who would win it. Yeah, that's just the most that I've seen so far. My only concern for Duke is Cooper Flagg, of him being healthy with that ankle. But if he is playing really, really well on Friday, teams better watch out.
Well, and you talk about ending the season on the right note. Auburn's lost 3 out of the last 4.
Yeah.
They lost in the semifinals of the SEC tournament. They lost their last 2 regular season games, close games against good teams, but still, they lost 3 out of the last 4 compared to a Houston on the other side of things, who is on I don't even know how many games in a row they've won, but they obviously ran the table and won the Big 12 tournament. They've not lost since Texas Tech. That was all the way back in, it's been a while, early February. So they haven't lost in over a month.
Okay. Well, if they're hot, they're hot. Don't break what's not, don't fix what's not broken. So, if they're playing really, really well, and Coach Sampson's a really, really good coach, and he's well experienced in these type of environments in terms of the March Madness. So, if you're saying that, I think Houston could have a legitimate chance as well.
So, when you do fill out your bracket, is it going to be a number 1 seed winning the entire thing?
No. I think I'll have at least 1 or 2 in the Final Four.
But in terms of national champion, is it going to be a 1 seed?
I think so for this year. Yes, I think this year, this might be Duke's year. I don't like saying it because me. I'm a North Carolina fan. That's the one team we despise. But the way that Duke's been playing on both sides of the basketball, I just don't see who could beat them. Auburn has a legitimate chance, but they lost 3 of the last 4, like you said. Mm-hmm. That's really it. That's pretty much it. Florida, I did like Florida in the tournament, in the SEC tournament. But I don't know, playing against a team that you are not familiarized with yourself early, because the first and second round are the hardest rounds to me.
Sure. Because
it's hard to get a start of momentum winning games that you need to win. So I'm interested to see how it will come out. But right now, I'm as much as I don't like saying this, I think Duke has a legitimate chance.
Well, if you're going to go with the 1 seed to win your championship in your bracket, you're in luck, because since the field expanded to 64 back in 1985, a number 1 seed has won the championship 25 times with an overall record of 5-15 and 131. Surprisingly, every seed 1 through 8 has won at least 1 championship since 1985, with the exception of number 5. Number 5's come up as the runner-up on 4 different occasions, but no national championships during that time. And it's almost become cliche at this point in time when you're picking upsets. Everybody says, hey, 12 beats 5. You got to pick at least one 12 beating a 5, and those do happen quite a lot. But diving into the numbers here, it's actually more likely for an 11 to beat a 6 than it is for a 12 to beat a 5.
So the 5s, you got Michigan, you got Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking Oregon and Clemson.
As 5s?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like Clemson. I do like Clemson out of all of them. But
that's a really good McNeese State team that's taking
that's
on
what
with
I'm
Will
saying.
Wade.
McNeese is really good. Yeah, they're really good.
But kind of looking at the 6-11s, and when Sam was in here the other day, we had to pick our Cinderellas. I picked Drake. Drake is a number 11 seed. They're taking on Missouri. They have the best defense in the entire country. If you're looking for an upset, I got Drake going over number 6 Missouri because, again, the numbers bear out. When you look at the history of the NCAA tournament, 11s beat 6s more times as often, 11s beat 6s more often than 12 beat 5s. And you've gotten a lot of great Cinderella runs in recent years from 11s. NC State last year was an 11 seed. They had to play their way through the ACC tournament just to get in. UCLA, when they made their run a couple years ago in 2021, VCU in 2011, Loyola Chicago with Sister Jean back in 2018.
Yeah, I remember
that George Mason team. One of the original Cinderellas back in 2006. Those were all 11 seeds.
Kansas and Arkansas in the first round. That's interesting. I'm just looking at this blind. I've not seen this bracket at all. So I'm just looking through this. That's an interesting game.
And if Arkansas wins and St. John's takes care of Omaha, you get Rick Pitino taking on John Calipari, reigniting the old bitter rivalry between the two.
Yeah, it's some good matchups in here. Cinderella wise, Clemson.
No, I wouldn't consider Clemson. You can't. I can't buy a Cinderella as a single digit seed.
Okay.
They got to be a double.
They got to be a double digit.
And I have a real now. Yes, NC State was an exception last year because they were from the ACC. But more often than not, Cinderellas, in my opinion, have to come from mid majors.
Norfolk.
Sure, they're a 16 seed,
and they've
listen. Any 16 seed would be a Cinderella,
and they've been the kingpin of the MEAC for years. Since I've been in school, they've been winning the MEAC for years.
Okay,
so I kind of have to give Norfolk credit to that. I'll just go with Drake. I mean, if defense travels, I can't deny defense. So if that's the case, I'm gonna have to go with Drake on this one. Just from me blindly looking at this, I have not seen this bracket yet until now.
Yeah. By the way, Drake made the field. Lamar didn't. So who really won the beef?
Drake.
Exactly. There you go.
Well, Kendrick did, but hey, I saw what you did there.
Lamar University in Texas did not make the field, and Drake did. So I'm just saying, you can add that to the list of things going on with that beef between the two. We'll talk more about this coming up at the end of the hour real quick. Coming up on the other side is Wednesday. Going to talk some racing with Jen Jensen as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jalen Tart along with you on our Wednesday here on The Game. And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. It's time for Who Sprung a Brew Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. Quickly, last night again in the first four, Alabama State taking down the St. Francis from Pennsylvania Red Flash 70-68. St. Francis not able to hold on to the ball too well, turning it over 15 times, allowing Alabama State to score 26 points off those 15 turnovers as they were springing a leak when they had the ball in their hands. Again, that's brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. But as we do each and every Wednesday, time talking a little bit of racing with Jen Jensen from the early game. Jen, it's been a fun and exciting start to the NASCAR season for 2025, and I think we got the best story of the season so far on Sunday with Josh Berry picking up his first career win at Las Vegas.
Did we not? Oh, my goodness. What a fun race that was. Overall, it was great and didn't really project that he was necessarily going to come away with the win. But in true fun NASCAR fashion, there we were, and how wonderful for the Wood brothers.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Josh Berry's a guy, I know we have a lot of lapsed fans that maybe listen to us and hear us talking about racing each and every week that, will say, well, it's not like it used to be. Drivers don't have personality they once did. These guys didn't come up working on their own stuff. Josh Berry's that kind of guy. He has had to grind to get where he's got. He's been given opportunities by guys like Dale Earnhardt Jr. and obviously now driving with the Wood brothers. But he's about as old school of a racer as you could ask for in 2025, and it's rare that you have a winner that I think everybody, not only in the entire sport, but across all fan bases, can be happy with. And I think that's what we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, he truly is a quintessential racer, and it's not like Dad was put him into a ride or things like that. Like, he's truly, like you said, worked his way up. It kind of reminds me of Kozlowski in a little bit, as far as Kozlowski's real big on understanding his car and working on it and all those types of things. But to be with such a historic team and just they all just look like they're having fun and just really he's doing well. I'm excited for him.
And again, the Wood brothers are NASCAR's longest tenure team, going all the way back to the beginnings, back in the 40s and the 50s, and cool to see them still competing. And look, for a period of time there when they had Paul Menard and Matt Benedetto, and more recently Harrison Burton, they just didn't look like a team that had the ability to compete on a week in, week out basis. They haven't looked that way since Ryan Blaney drove for them last back in 2017.
Right, that was like the last time that they had that win that wasn't a super speedway.
Right, and when you look at the way Josh Berry's performed to start the season, it's very clear that this team is going to be a consistent contender for wins on a week-in, week-out basis, which is very exciting to see. Again, obviously a great story with Josh Berry, but like everybody loves the Wood brothers. And again, they've been a part of the sport as long as it's been going on. To see them get off to such a strong start this season and already get themselves in the win column is very cool to see.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I doubt that they seriously expected that just a handful of races in, that they would have already punched their ticket to potentially be in the playoffs. So what an exciting season for them. Takes a little bit of maybe a little pressure off, but now it's like, okay, we're in and we're going.
And you kind of mentioned it a moment ago, this race just in general, very chaotic, a lot of cautions, a lot of mixed strategies, those kind of things. And we got treated to a pretty neat battle there in those last couple laps with Josh Berry and Daniel Suarez, who, by the way, really great run for him coming home in second, kind of battling back and forth there. Ryan Preece not too far behind as, again, a little bit of a different mix up at the top after 3 weeks of Christopher Bell dominating.
Yeah, and they were not the ones who were running up front for the majority of the race. So it was kind of interesting because all of a sudden I noticed Preece being towards, where did he come from? So it was kind of fun to see a few of those names who, they can drive but just haven't been up there, and to see Suarez do as well as he did, especially after having, an issue the week before. I was glad to see he came in with a second-place finish.
Yeah, very strong start of the season, not only for Josh Berry, but kind of Fords in general. And I know you can only complain so much when you've won the past 3 championships all in the next-gen era, but it really feels like Fords get off to really slow starts. They kind of hit their stride mid to late summer and then obviously turn it on in the playoffs when it really counts. But you're looking at Josh Berry having already won. Joe Logano, no, the finishes don't bear out, but he's led a lot of laps. Ryan Blaney's run well, had some misfortune as well. Austin Cindric's has led some laps as well. You're seeing Fords get off to a really strong start to the season, which is something we haven't really been able to say too much in the next gen era so far.
No, it really hasn't. Like you said, it's been you've had to wait later in the season to see that. And aside from maybe Coda, yeah, they've performed a lot better, and kind of making you think, well, are we going to see a little? Is the tide changing now? So I think it's exciting for anybody who's a true Ford manufacturer fan.
And now we're getting into the portion of the season because, look, you had Daytona week 1, Atlanta week number 2, both those super speedways where your performance of those is not indicative of how you're going to be on a week-in, week-out basis. And then you had the road course at Austin, which is kind of the same deal. You had the option tires at Phoenix. Now we're finally getting into the part of the season with Vegas this past weekend, Martinsville. You got Homestead coming up this weekend. You're going to go into Bristol here in a couple weeks. What you're doing over these next handful of weeks will really tell us who the true contenders are on a consistent week-in, week-out basis that maybe the first 4 races didn't necessarily give us an indication of.
No, especially when you have the mix of like the super speedways where it's kind of anybody's game or could potentially be. But I think that, yes, we will see where the consistency comes in. Will you see a Christopher Bell continue to rise to the top? Will he be? Is Larson going to finally emerge and win? What are we going to see? But when we talk about previously talking about Fords, it will be interesting to see how they perform this weekend because historically Ford and the Toyotas seem to do pretty well at Homestead. So it'd be fun to see another Ford or several in the top 10 for sure, but to see another one get the checkered flag.
By the way, is it not weird to have Homestead this early on in the season?
It's so bizarre to me. It's like, no, it's not October. Why are we racing there? So yeah, that's the schedule in general. There, yes, not tons of changes, but they're just enough that it's really kind of throwing me off a little bit, and is making the season, I think, a little more unique.
I'm hoping this is the one year we have it in the spring again, because if any track deserves to hope a championship race like it did for so many years, it's definitely Homestead.
100%. Yeah. So I'm with you. We'll see how it goes in the spring. Curious how the weather holds, because I think that could be, is spring in Florida, is that a good time, or are you going to see shower activity and all of that? So, but it's such good racing down there, so I'm really anxious to see how everybody performs this weekend.
And would you believe we're only 2.5 weeks from Darlington?
No, it does. Again, another thing that's throwing me off. I mean, I'm thrilled that Darlington's not going to be on Mother's Day this year. That's nice because I don't have to pick between my children and the race. But it's so crazy that before Easter we're going to be at Darlington. So pretty excited about that.
Yep, looking forward to it. And man, this time next week we'll be a week and a half away and inching ever closer to it. So look forward to Homestead this weekend, and we'll react to that next week.
That sounds like a plan. Thanks so much, Tyler.
Absolutely. Appreciate it as always, Jen. Jen Jensen from Early Game, talking racing as she does with me each and every Wednesday. We'll jump back into the basketball conversation to wrap up hour number 2 of the Extra Point. But first, it's once again a chance for you to get in on the 107.5 The Game bracket contest. Call right now, 803-404-6100. Caller number 6 will be assigned a team, and caller number 8 will be assigned a team for your chance to win Gamecock baseball season tickets for the remainder of the season. Call right now, 803-404-6100. This is the Extra Point. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's Outerhead and Jalen Tart hanging out with you on your Wednesday, talking all things March Madness ahead of the tournament getting started properly coming up tomorrow with the Field of 64. We talked about Cinderellas a little bit earlier on in the hour. I might have a contender for America's Cinderella based on what a coach said yesterday in previewing their opponent. Are you familiar with the Troy Trojans?
No.
They're getting set to take on Kentucky in round 1 as a 14 seed, taking on number 3. Their head coach, Scott Cross, was talking with KSR, Kentucky Sports Radio, the other day. How they got on this topic, I don't know, but he talked about the fact they only like to sign guys that love Waffle House. And here is what he said about just that.
For a town of 15,000 when school's not in town, so you can imagine you got one Waffle House per 5,000 people, so probably most per capita anywhere in the country. But started off the first 2 recruits I brought on campus. We're driving down the main street. I point out Waffle House, ask them if they want to eat there for breakfast. And they were like, Waffle House? Hell no, I don't want to go to Waffle House. I'm like, okay, my bad. We'll try and eat somewhere else. Long story short, we signed neither one of those guys. Then we brought a guy named Nick Stampley, who's an OKG, our kind of guy. He was our 3rd recruit to visit. We're driving by. We don't even say anything about Waffle House. He sees it. He's like, oh, Coach, y'all got a Waffle House here. Can we go there tomorrow? He was our first signee. He was one of the toughest guys we've ever coached. And from that point forward, we just kind of offhand ask him, do you like Waffle House? If the answer is yes, it's like, we sign them. If it's no, we never get them. So I told my staff, I was like, hey, y'all can save a lot of time and money. First phone conversation in passing, ask them, do they like Waffle House or not?
See, in March, we look for teams that capture the heart of America. A coach that he doesn't recruit you solely off of your preference on Waffle House or not, but the baseline of do you like Waffle House or not, whether you're going to sign with our team, I love that. I can support that.
I can too, but they only have 3. Well, they're building a 3rd one. They only have 2.
Still, but that's a small area.
Yeah.
Listen, I come from a town of about 100,000 people, and we have about 6, including 2 right around the corner from each other.
Wow.
Literally, they are not a half a mile apart.
Wow.
2 Waffle Houses.
But I like that gesture, even though possibly if they can partner with Troy for an NIL partnership, that would be even more better.
Now, well, that's the thing is like Waffle House doesn't advertise. Like you never see commercials.
You don't see a commercial.
You'll see like a billboard.
Yeah.
But like, is there like an advertising budget for them?
I don't know.
It's a good question.
That is something to look into.
If I was a Troy basketball player and you could promise me free waffles, heck yeah, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know, because that's a lot of carbs. I don't know if I'd recommend eating the waffle before the game.
And a waffle is something that I don't get from Waffle House. I'm a patty melt guy.
Okay, that's very solid.
That's me. So
people sleep on the food after breakfast.
Yes.
Their other stuff's good too.
Yes.
Do you have, so again, that was kind of an obvious sign from Scott Cross, well, these guys aren't going to fit here because they don't like Waffle House. Is there like a obvious sign you're not going to vibe with someone based on their food preference? Like if somebody does or doesn't like a certain food, you're like, ooh, I don't know if I can be friends with you.
No, I mean, you like what you like. And if it's something that I'm willing to try, I like trying different foods. So if I'm willing to try it and then I like it or don't like it, then that's my choice that I will want to do. Now, I get it. If they let's say the player likes Waffle House, but their production is not that good. Then what do you do?
Well, look, it's not the end-all, be-all, but it's kind of like the general consensus that, well, if you like Waffle House, you're probably going to fit here. Mm-hmm. If not, you're probably not. But I don't know. It's funny to hear a coach lay it out like that. You know what I mean?
Where you just ask, you save your, save the time.
Like, listen,
do you like Waffle House?
Because again, I've never been to Troy, Alabama.
Me neither.
But it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot there. So if you don't like Waffle, I don't think there's any 5-star breakfast places that give you a different option, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's kind of I like that pitch. And he says he likes the people and likes the service. I'm guessing he wants Waffle House type people on his team.
Maybe. Hey, gritty, hard workers.
And they're in the tournament. I mean, they're in the tournament.
And you know what? They're taking on a blue blood in Kentucky. And listen, if Troy beats Kentucky, there's got to be something Waffle House related going on with this, right?
And then there's got to be something going on with Kentucky because how do you lose in the first round with two different head coaches?
True. Hey, listen, they lost to Jack Golke in Oakland last year, which was inexcusable, and that was a big reason why Calipari decided to go pursue other options elsewhere because they were about ready to run him out of Lexington. So Mark Pope, first challenge, going to be facing a bunch of scruffy Waffle House dudes in the first round.
Well, from looking at it, Troy is a really good rebounding team. The thing is, rebounding is really key. Kentucky scores more three-pointers with 9.6 and Troy's 7.7, so rebounding is going to be key in that matchup. I don't know. I think Kentucky has a chance to win or get upset.
We'll see.
I don't know.
Game's coming up on Friday night, I believe, at 7:30 on one of the True TVs or TBS or something like that. Been fun, Jalen, and this time next week, we'll know what our Sweet 16 looks like.
Awesome. We'll do.
That'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. What happened to day one of spring practice? That's up next here on the game. 11 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you on opening day of spring practice for South Carolina football, off and running for the next month leading up to the spring game on April the 18th. Guys coming in here fresh off the practice field. Did it start exactly at 9:43? Were we punctual this year?
Yeah, I think we were.
Yeah, I think we actually were punctual this year, which we appreciated. So,
see, I had Jack on the phone until 9:42, so I gave him a 1 minute buffer to make sure he got in on time.
Look at him, pulling double duty. Wes and I would be like, "Sorry, Tyler, we can't do the show."
Stopped out the entire time.
No, not really.
Well, fortunately, y'all's availability doesn't typically run into the 11 o'clock hour.
Yes,
so
this is true.
Gives you the ability to be here and break down what you saw. Anybody complain about the weather, Wes? Any weather complaints?
None that I heard.
None
that I heard. Well,
it's a little breezy.
Some of you,
in the shade, a little breezy, a little cool.
Okay,
so,
all right.
In the sun, a little hot, a little hot. No,
just
it was beautiful.
We know that's your pet peeve.
Yes, actually, that was one of actually Muschamp's stories he would tell too. Is the guys that he's like, you ever been on a team with a guy who show up at practice? And it's cold out here. And then when it starts to, weather gets warmer, guys, hot out here. Then when it's raining, guys, it's raining, man. I don't want to practice. And then you just realize some people just don't want to practice. Well, some people just don't want to go outside, I guess. So that's why it's my pet peeve. Like, it really is a mental thing too. You're as hot as you let your mind. Like the more you it's hot out here, the hotter you will feel.
Oh, I did do one. It wasn't the weather, but kinda.
Chris was talking about it's muddy out here.
I complained about the mud because I stepped onto the field and I slid.
Okay, yeah, that's fair, I guess.
I said it was muddy that's more than once too. It was bad. I'm aware now.
Is that complaining or is that observational?
It was complaining.
We need y'all know the Kobe meme where he's just like soft.
Yeah,
the GIF. Is there an audio version of that? Because we need that on the board.
I can try and find that.
And then we just need to, whenever somebody's complaining.
I do like that idea.
Soft.
And I would play it for myself. Like, I'm self-aware and now self-conscious.
Well, hopefully you weren't wearing a nice pair of shoes. You knew that you would be going out on the practice field.
No, we're good.
Some that you're not afraid to get dirty. Again, first practice, beginning of spring, got a lot to learn over the course of the next month. You guys are going to be able to see occasionally what's going on out there. Imagine you guys saw a lot of stretching and getting things ready for practice.
Great stretching.
Start. Yeah. What exactly?
High energy.
What exactly did we get our eyes on earlier on this morning?
Good range of motion on the stretching.
Mm-hmm.
Special teams drills.
Okay.
That's very common. Snapping, kicking,
holding,
catching some. I wasn't even down there. Were they catching kickoffs or punts or both? We're going to say both.
I'm not going to call out.
Yeah.
I will. You know what? I will. I'll call out Jack. I'm like, Jack, I didn't get a chance because I was trying to run something down. I was like, you said return. Was it punt or kick? I couldn't tell. But because I think it was like farther away or something. Sometimes you get obscured.
Now for this spring, it's talking about all specialists of intrigue because you're replacing your kicker, your punter, your long snapper. We're going to figure out who's going to be doing the returning, the holder as well. So that is, again, maybe not as fun as watching offense and defense, but something that is going to be very important this year.
Well, nobody talks about the snapper or the holder until they screw up.
Yeah.
And so really, and Hunter was around long enough that he kind of was able to develop his own personality brand where the fans started to know, he had the touchdown catch in the bowl game, local guy. So maybe you did start to know the snapper a little bit around here just because he was here for so long and he was a local guy. Obviously, Kai being the best punter in the history of football, he, did a really good job both sort of being a guy people knew as the punter and the holder. It's going to be completely different. I don't think that's something anybody gets excited or enjoys talking about, but in terms of position battles within the program, something the coaches are probably focused on, absolutely. I'm honestly amazed at the way college guys in general just consistently are able to snap, hold, kick. and make it look easy. If you put a random person out there and was like, hey, catch this ball cleanly every time and then quickly put it down, they would struggle with it. So I think that's certainly something that the staff will have front of mind. And when you bring in a guy like Joe DeCamillis, obviously this is year 2 for him. There was some transition last year, but really this is where he's going to start to make his money, I think, in terms of trying to put together all those specialists.
Yeah, and I would include with the specialists, too, you got to consider South Carolina losing so many veterans from last year's team. We tend to think about offense, defense, and then when you think of special teams, you think kicker, punter primarily, snapper, holder, if you're really diving into it. But there are guys that are covering and blocking, and some of those guys are gone, too, right? So Carolina not afraid to play starters on special teams since Shane Beamer's been here. And so even a guy like you think about Boogie Huntley, right? Starter and very important player on the defensive line, but he's out there playing special teams. Demetrius Knight, like a bunch of those guys. So there is more work than ever to be done on special teams. Now, Carolina, their staff, Shane Beamer, DeCamillis, Limbo, when he was here, they actually walk the walk instead of just talk the talk and saying that special teams is a third of the game. It's important. They spend a lot of time on it. And so I think start getting some answers. That answer may be, hey, we feel pretty good, we feel okay, still worried, or hey, we're real worried, or anything in between. They've got a few guys already on campus that are going to be vying for some of those roles. It's interesting that one of them, Max Kelly, freshman kicker signee, he won't be on campus until summer. You would like to have him, you don't. Today, guys, first guy out there kicking field goals was Mason Love, who's originally signed as a punter, but was all-state as a punter and kicker in high school. I think he was 16 of 20 as a senior on field goals. He broke his school record multiple times. I think he had a 57-yarder in high school. So he's got some range. And so, just early thing to watch. I'm shocked more people aren't talking about this because, Wes, we were talking about it yesterday. Place kicking was a huge topic of conversation last year, before the season and during the season, after the season. Yet you lose that entire kicking battery, and some people, I feel like, are glossing over it a little bit.
Well, I think it may have to do with the fact there's so much being replaced on this team.
Yeah,
because again, if you had 85% of your production returning on offense and defense, I think it would be a bigger deal. Not that it's not a big deal, but I think it kind of falls down the pecking order for some people compared to offensive line and linebacker and defensive line and those kind of things that are obviously going to be huge talking points this offseason. But yeah, again, like last year, God bless Alex Herrera, he tried his best, but he missed some pretty critical kicks at pretty key times, and that was something that you got kind of just used to being the norm at South Carolina, was having good kicking all the way through Mitch Jeter being here a couple seasons ago. And now you go into another unknown this offseason of, okay, who's going to be able to step up and hopefully be consistent going forward?
Yeah, and I would say, borderline great kicking at South Carolina. If you just look at the percentages and the fact that at a certain distance, you were counting on field goals being made. And that was just, a little bit different last year. And Herrera was not awful. Like, he was not as bad as I think some fans. And it got a little bit over the top, I feel like, in how he was treated. But the fact of the matter is, he finished, let's see, I'm looking at it right now, 71.4%. You would, you definitely like that number, I would say, to be more into the 80s, ideally. The top couple of kickers in your league, generally, if you're looking at the SEC the last couple of years, you're going to be into the high 80s, if not the 90s. And, so I think he sat about 75% most of the year, which is, again, not terrible, but you go back, I just clicked a random year, SEC-wise, 2021, who's at the top? It's actually Parker White. So 94.1%. He missed one kick, 16 of 17. So that is kind of your standard right there. Typically, if you're going to be in the low to mid 70s, that's going to put you around 9th, 10th, 11th in the league, which, you obviously want to be a little bit better than that, especially we know South Carolina. Here's the thing. You're going to be in a lot of close games. Like that's just the fact of the matter. Unless you are just the elite of the elite, or unless you're just awful and you're on the other end of it, if you play in the SEC, you're going to be in a ton of games that are within the margins. And so we saw it last year. Hit some field goals, maybe you win a couple of those games that you lost. And, yeah, I think it's a huge factor. The other thing is you are kind of, to your point, Tyler, you're rebuilding the defense. There's the other side is not a question, but just the buzz for Lenora Sellers, the buzz for what year 2 could be. That's going to just dominate some of the conversation, especially from a national standpoint. Hey, they got Sellers and they got Dylan Stewart back. That team's going to be great. You sort of lose a little bit of the minutia of what this team could be if you're looking at it from a more national standpoint, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's almost been, you feel, I know Kai Kroger kind of took a step back in 2023, dealt with an injury, but 22 and then this past year, I mean, he was one of the best punters in the country, if not the best. Just incredibly consistent, a weapon, for fakes, obviously, but just going out there punting the ball, he was an asset. When Kai Kroger went out there, it's almost not a negative all the time to punt. Normally you're groaning, you punt and you're like, we're about to get some good field position here. If we can go get a stop defensively. And a lot of the time, to your point, Wes, over several coaches, over many years here in Columbia, you've had a kicker where, a guy comes up to kick and you can almost bank on it. Now, that's not normal. I think that's what we have to realize. It's not normal. You would love to have that. And so it is a question. Look, there's going to be some points. We said going into last season, there's going to be some games where it comes down to a kick, fair or not. There are other plays you could have made in the game to where it doesn't come down to a kick, but sometimes it did. And there are a couple instances where South Carolina wasn't able to convert. You would love to have that, but it is a question mark going into this season. But I don't think it's just a place-kicking question. It's punting, snapping, holding. Kai Kroger was the holder for Carolina, did a great job with it. And then, like I said earlier, just all the specialists. Who are the return guys? Who's out there covering? A lot of veteran presences. And so when Shane Beamer talks about how many veterans they lost, yes, still a talented team. It's not just the leadership. It's not just making plays on offense and defense. It's out there on special teams, which has been so critical for him.
Yeah, we'll dive more into what happened at the availability y'all were out there for spring practice. Number 1 coming up as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along. By the way, tomorrow the Schroeder's Towing Road Show goes on the road to Firehouse Subs. Going to be out at the Main Street location on campus from 9 until 12. And then Terry will be out at Twin Peaks down in the Vista tomorrow and on Friday as well as we get you set for the NCAA tournament getting rolling on the men's side of things. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Wednesday here in the game.
As Tyler said, we're going to be out at Firehouse Subs USC campus location on Main Street tomorrow, 9 to noon. So Thursday, March 20th, come out to see us. We'll be out there 9 to noon. The store will open at 10 o'clock. Come by, get yourself a delicious Firehouse Sub. Any of your Firehouse Subs favorites are available. The hot sauce bar is available, but we've also, Firehouse Subs, they've taken it to the next step too, because you can come out and they've teamed up with Hot Ones, the hottest talk show around, to get 2 new subs, the Zesty Garlic Cooking Ladder with the Hot Ones Garlic Fresno Classic Hot Sauce and the Spicy Dill Hook and Ladder. That has the Last Dab Reaper Sauce with the Last Dab Pickle. Come by, see Tyler try this one live on the air. I can't wait. I have had it. It is extremely hot, so I can't wait to see his reaction. Come have some fun with us. Firehouse Subs. If you're hungry today, you can't wait till tomorrow. I don't blame you. FirehouseSubs.com or Firehouse Subs app. 15 locations around the Midlands.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris recapping what was seen from day one of spring practice, at least the portion that media was able to get out there and look at. We talked a lot about special teams in that last segment, kind of putting a bow on that. You mentioned Jack was out there watching some kind of return, whether it be punt or kick. I did mention a lot of guys working on returns, those being Jalen Kilgore, who did a lot of returning. Obviously, these past couple seasons, Jared Brown, Dre Jacobs, Lex Cyrus, Jace Blackshear, Jaden Sellers, and I believe Brian Rowe as well, back there doing some form of returning with special teams.
Yep. That's another position, man. They're going to have to replace guys. Obviously, Jalen did it a little bit more last year in terms of when they were in punt safe and they left the defense on the field, Jalen would go back and punt return. But they really liked Juju as kickoff returner and punt returner last year. So that means you clearly are going to have to, replace both of those spots for this season. And I do remember this from last year as well. He being Joe DeCamillis, he reps a lot of guys in the return game. He really does. So I don't know until we like just get some word about hey they like this guy, they like that guy, or until we hear from Joe D exactly maybe who some front runners are. I think that's a position that will maybe be pretty open, at least at the first part of spring. And I think for them, I like the group just in terms of athleticism. Like I don't really think that's going to be a concern in terms of like, can you find a returner? I think you've got a lot of options there, but I do think it's a storyline in terms of there's a number of guys. Like it's a wide open competition.
Yeah, and I think it's going to come down to trust. I mean, if you look specifically at punt return, does Jalen Kilgore have a leg up because he has actual game experience doing it, and he's been reliable in that game experience? I mean, maybe so. Now, he's going to be a key starter for you at nickel. Does that weigh in? Maybe not, because we've seen him be a starter before and go out there, and they trot him out there as the punt returner. So I tend to think if he's the best guy, they'll put him out there. But they will rotate a bunch of guys. I mean, they had some walk-ons out there. They had DBs. They had receivers. That punt return, kick return is going to be a DB and receiver heavy, obviously, rotation and position with guys that you're auditioning out there. Does Nick Harbor, get a strong look again at kick returner? Again, he's got some in-game experience. He kind of fits that mold. I think that's entirely possible. I'm curious to see, as time goes on, one of these freshman wide receivers, did they make a push? Because in addition to those names that you just went through, Tyler, Jack just shot me a text and said he had forgotten to mention that there was also, he thinks Malik Clark was out there, another freshman receiver. So, you've got some interesting, very athletic guys. I mean, Lex Cyrus, Brian Rowe, Malik Clark, Jaden Sellers was out there. You got some guys who have done it in high school, and you look at them and say, okay, they're very athletic, they can run, but it goes beyond that, especially with a punt returner, different type, harder skill, one of the hardest skills out there.
Sure.
Kick return, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier and it's different, but two different skill sets. So does one of these freshman receivers make a run here?
Yeah, just catching a punt compared to catching a kickoff is night and day. For a college athlete, catching a kickoff is relatively easy. It's end over end. You don't have, you got guys bearing down on you, but they are many, many, many yards away. Punt return, you're looking up into the lights. Every stadium has different lights, and depending on the punter, it may have one spin, different punter may have a different spin, all these different factors. And guess what? If you don't fair catch it, some dude is going to be within 8 yards of you, and that would be on a good day.
Right.
So I think that's one of those things. You got to have a certain mindset about you. And one thing I always just respect out of Juju, man, this is a small dude, and he's fearless back there. So I think you've got to obviously have some natural ability. You got to have some talent to be the punt returner, but you got to have some confidence about you, and not just normal, I'm a college football player confidence. You got to have a little extra at that spot.
Speaking of punt return, somebody that did it a few times last year was Vakari Swain. And Chris, you noted on the Insiders Forum that Swain not participating in practice as he's working through an academic issue, at least at this point in time.
Yeah, and, to be clear, Shane Beamer hasn't addressed this yet directly as far as a timeline for his return, but he is working through an academic issue. He's still on the team, right? So, maybe it's a while before he gets back. It's interesting because I think defensive back and more specifically corner, where Vakari has played in 16 games and was expected to certainly be heavily in the mix for a starting spot. I don't think this news, completely takes away that possibility, because at some point the expectation is that he'll be back. But he wasn't out there day one, and Carolina's got Judge Collier coming back. They have some returning guys on the roster with experience at corner. When you look at, Emory Floyd, you look at Jalewis Solomon, DeMarcus Leach is a freshman, expected to get a look, and then 2 transfers and Miles Norwood and Brandon Cisse that the staff seem to really like. So it should be pretty competitive out there, not only for 2 starting spots, but for snaps just in general. So spring is important development time. Vakari's still, even though he's going to be a third-year player, he has only played in 16 games, and so he's still a young player. So it's just some missed development time. So nothing to go crazy over in terms of an overreaction, but not out there day one. We'll see what the next, few days, few weeks holds.
Yeah, and I think, it's a guy I've always been, very high on. If he does miss quite a bit of time, I mean, that's time you don't get back either. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, Cisse's coming in here for a reason. Miles Norwood coming in for a reason. And, from a South Carolina perspective, you're glad you have that depth. But from Vakari's perspective, like, you're going to have to come back whenever that is and just hit the ground running, man, because they've done a good job. Yes, they have to replace, obviously, the big one, and Nicky Maworry in the secondary. But I was talking to somebody yesterday around the program, and they feel really good, I feel like, about the overall talent you have in the secondary in general. And then when you start talking about, hey, who's my best 5, that they're going to be able to kind of piece it all together. And so, one thing we haven't even gotten to get to, Tyler, is my conversation with Clayton White yesterday, because there's been so much else going on. You asked him, hey, who are some guys that have maybe caught y'all's eyes in the winter workout program? And he said, hey, other than the people you all know about. And he mentioned Devontae Miles on the defensive line. He said Dindy put up some good numbers at their combine they had. He said both linebackers he likes, but then he also made a point. I noticed a slight change in his tone when he was talking about Cisse. Like, he kind of lit up a little bit. He's like, Cisse. And then he told us, hey, Miles Norwood's had, and he had a genuine feel when he also said, hey, man, we've hit on some of these guys. So that doesn't mean you hit on all of them, but there's some confidence in a lot of these guys. And Tyler, also, how about me just nailing the Okoronkwo with the pressure on?
I saw that in person. That was phenomenal.
Without any phonetics or anything.
No,
I like his abbreviation of J.O. I think that's going to go far. That's going to stick.
Okoronkwo.
Before we'll get to some of that conversation that we had with Clayton White coming up on the other side, but any final observations or thoughts from being out at spring practice this morning?
I tell you who just popped a little bit. This is completely eye test where I was just like literally warming up, guys. But Jaquavius Dodd, big kid. I was like, who is 22? Because 22 defense used to be Bam Martin Scott.
Yep.
I was like, who is that guy? Quay Dodd, listed 6'6", 245, every bit of it, I would say. Cutter Woods has some size on him for a true freshman. I had, who's 15? Okay, it's Cutter Woods. Lots of new numbers, lots of new names out there. And I would say Fred J.R. Johnson, who has changed numbers. He's now rocking Debo's old 0 number.
So he's changed numbers, he's changed names. What's he going to change next?
Hopefully he changes his status into being a starter this year. Would be a great step, which we would project. And just look, I mean, he's always looked the part. I don't want to say it's any different than it was because he looked the part last year, honestly, frankly, as a true freshman. But he just looks linebacker-ish, if that's a thing.
Yeah, exciting stuff. And again, we'll have a full month of spring practice leading up to spring game, which we'll also get to coming up a little bit at the end of the hour. But up next, we'll revisit that conversation with Clayton White from yesterday as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along on your Wednesday here on The Game.
Hey, anybody out there that's ever remodeled your home or built a custom home, it can be kind of challenging. It can be stressful. And so you can trust the local guys at Integrated Media to handle a very important part of that. It can be added to your list of to-do items because if you need things like installing your internet lines, if you're looking at in-ceiling speakers in your home office or kitchen remodel, if you want outdoor speakers and a waterproof TV included in your new setup, or just something as simple as, hey, we got these TVs mounted on the wall. I don't have time or the knowledge to mess with them and then moving them safely. Don't want them to get damaged. The guys at Integrated Media can help you with that. Contact Michael and Nathan for any of your new home or remodeling needs. 803-948-8327. They can help with any remodeling and new home construction that has to do with audio visual. They've been to my home. They've been to Wes's home. You can trust them to come out to yours. Local, great service, integratedmediainc.com.
And welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you here on the game. Coming tonight, by the way, at 6 o'clock. Here from Coach Maneri, his first edition of Carolina Calls as he previews the Arkansas series coming up as South Carolina looks to notch their first series win in SEC play. Continue on with the conversation about spring football. Of course, talked about everything that y'all saw out there already this morning. Yesterday, Clayton White joined us right about this time as we were wrapping up things out at Pro Day. Wes mentioned what he said about the guys that were standing out in off-season workouts, but another big question that we posed to him was, with so many guys coming in out of the portal, very much unproven, obviously guys coming out of the high school ranks that haven't played at this level yet, how do you go about developing those guys that have not yet proven themselves at this level of college football?
The first thing when you say development, we got to make sure they understand just how we do things here at South Carolina, first and foremost. Make sure they understand the lay of the land, they understand how we, just how we operate. And I think the second thing is we start football school every January, so we intensely, with some intents, we attack that moment just to get them on the same page as far as just our defensive playbook and how we talk and how we walk. And then tomorrow's practice. And then we're just really told those guys tomorrow to go out and fly around. Like, just fly around. Let me play football tomorrow. We don't have a ton of stuff on install one, just so we can kind of assess what we have and then go from there.
And that's what spring football is for, is a lot of assessment, obviously, especially with as much turnover as you've had on defense. Again, we watched the majority of that defense, test out for NFL scouts yesterday, and going to be hearing their names called here in a couple weeks' time. And again, you're not bringing in necessarily guys with the same resume that the Demetrius Knights and the Kyle Kennards had coming in, who weren't superstars of their prior schools, but had played a lot of football and had decent levels of production coming in here. And obviously, they elevated that to a different level once they were within South Carolina system. You don't have too many guys with that same report outside of your Brandon Ceesays and the secondary guys like that. So it is going to be a lot of assessing, I guess, over the course of the next month, kind of figuring out who your main role players are going to be.
Yeah, for sure. And, I thought Clayton had a great way of putting it, where he said he felt like a basketball coach and his one-and-dones have moved on, and now he's got a little bit younger crowd. Reminded me a little bit of Doan Staley, kind of talking about the Doan's daycare and just having some younger guys in there. And, they're going to be a little bit different than your older guys who have played a bunch. And, even like you look at Okoronkwo, transfer guy, but, second year in college ball. And, Sean Murphy, a little bit of a veteran just in terms of he's been in college ball for a while now, but certainly, D. Knight came in as a super older guy and had played a pretty good bit at Charlotte. So it's just different. And, I imagine there's going to be some movement within things in the spring, but I thought it was interesting. Clayton White kind of went back to what I've always been told was one of just his key tenets for his defense is he wants them to be able to play fast. Like, he's never been a guy that said, we want to just out-scheme the offense to the extent that we have 100 different calls and all these different looks, and, we just want to confuse everybody. He wants his guys to be able to run, be able to not think as they play. So there's going to be mistakes in spring. That's what it's for. But I do think there's some genuine excitement, not just about these transfers, but also just about some guys who are clearly going to have to step into bigger roles this year. You look at JR. Jaron Willis, man, they've not given up on him. And we weren't out there, obviously, for snap one of 11 on 11. But from what we had been told, he was going to be out there alongside JR as kind of the two day one starters. And, so it's a huge opportunity for a ton of these guys to step into bigger roles.
Yeah, going to be a lot of competition, I think, at spots. You kind of go through the defense, and there's a few players where you're like, they're starting. Dylan Stewart's starting for the Gamecocks.
Breaking news.
DQ Smith's going to be a starter. But, man, there are a bunch of guys where you're like, hey, it's going to kind of be open. The guys, J.R. Johnson, Jaron Willis as returners, they're gonna open the spring as starters, and they're going to have, I think, a great shot to hold on to that. But you've got a couple transfers. You got a freshman class. You look at defensive tackle. A lot of questions there. Who's going to grab those spots? Cornerback, Judge Collier. It would be a surprise, in my opinion, if he isn't a starter. He already has been a starter in his first couple years here. but what's the other spot look like? What's the other safety spot look like? So there's a lot of competition, and I think it's between, you have some guys who are freshmen, you have guys who are returners, you have some transfers at certain positions. I mean, just to go back to corner, Swain, whenever he gets back, he'll be in the mix. You've got Cisse, you've got Norwood. But then, Jalewis Solomon, remember this guy's a recruit, like big-time recruit, 4-star guy. Was originally thought of as maybe a safety nickel, but he played corner last year. Could he be in the mix, whether at corner or ultimately somewhere else? This is a talented guy. So I think they have a lot of intriguing options and a lot of answers to find out in the spring that I think it'll be very interesting to continue tracking that, as these practices go on.
Of course, you're replacing a lot that you've lost on both sides of the ball, and typically one side is ahead of the other to start things off with. Sometimes even when the season rolls around, is it kind of flip of the coin of which one's going to be ahead of the other, or do you kind of lean more towards offense just because you lost so much on defense comparatively?
Yeah, typically your defense is ahead of your offense. And even the fascinating thing about that is even a lot of times it tracks that way maybe when you bring back a lot on offense. But I would guess, just based on the fact that not only do you have your quarterback coming back, but you have a dynamic quarterback coming back, that the offense will be a little bit ahead of the defense overall. But again, I do think that kind of evens out just because defense is typically, it's a little bit easier to go out there and at least look somewhat competent on defense than it is on offense, where I feel like everybody has to do their job on any given play. And on defense, you really only have so many coverages you can call. On offense, you have infinite plays in theory that you could run. And even though he's been here, there is a new offensive coordinator in charge. So how much is different about the way Shula's going to do things? Got to replace the entirety of that offensive line in the interior. New running backs. I think it's not like this is it's not like this is a completely full offense coming back. That said, the more I sort of learn about what this offense could look like, the more I think we actually should have fairly high expectations for the upside of this offense.
Yeah, because you feel like you can improve on, this is an offense that was kind of dangerous at the back half of the season. I mean, you can't be poor on offense and win, 7 straight games to close out the regular season and beat some really good teams in the process. You got to be good in all phases. But you feel like there's a lot more upside to go. I mean, Lenore Sellers is a special player, but he's not a finished product. Like, he can get better. He can take a next step and go to the next level. Offensively, we talked with Beamer about this, Wes, streamlining the playbook a little bit more. Taking what worked last year, but shifting around some other things. I do think Mike Shula's not coming in saying, I'm just taking Dow Loggins' playbook and calling plays out of it. No, he's going to put his stamp on the offense. And then even some of the areas that have not been as strong as they could be, like receiver, you kind of feel like between the guys you get back and some of the freshmen that are going to push, that could be a better area, right? Now you're replacing Rocket Sanders, who's also a special player, but you got some guys you feel like you could plug in there to be pretty good. Tight end, same thing with losing Josh Simon, but returning some other guys and adding some other guys. So still questions there, but I feel like you can kind of see, like you said, Wes, the trajectory and the potential there.
A lot of stories follow as the spring goes along, of course, culminating with the spring game on April the 18th, which got a little bit of news on that yesterday, which we'll dive into coming up on the other side. But as we head into this break, another chance for you to enter the 1075 The Game bracket contest. Just like always, be caller number 6 or caller number 8. You'll be assigned a team, and if that team wins the national championship, you will win Gamecock baseball season tickets for the remainder of the season. So callers number 6 and 8 right now at 803-404-6100. Enter yourself in to the 1075 The Game bracket contest. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris wrapping up your Wednesday edition. Reminder, tomorrow we're going to be out at Firehouse Subs on Main Street right here in the heart of campus from 9 until 12. Come by and see us. I'm preparing myself for the last dab and how I'm going to deal with that. Hopefully it's not too bad. I can still talk on the air.
Bring some milk.
Would they allow me to bring milk in there?
I'm sure. Yeah. Bring a gallon.
A gallon of milk?
Yeah. Nah, bring a half gallon.
Okay.
I think
Even that? Good God.
Well, I almost texted our guy, Larry Chandler, and asked if they had milk because I wanted to, if I'm kind of making you do. I feel like I'm pressuring you into it a little bit.
A little bit.
Tyler's like, yeah, you are.
And so I wanted to make sure that I kind of took care of you, didn't leave you man on an island.
Okay.
So I don't know if he's got those little, because they have kids' meals at Firehouse.
That's true, they do.
So I don't know if they had the little box milk.
Maybe.
But you would put down, 5 of those.
Okay.
So you might want to go ahead and.
Gotta psych myself up for this. And again, we'll be out there tomorrow. Come by and see us, hang out, enjoy the last dab, sandwich yourself if you're up for it. And I'll let you know how hot it is tomorrow.
Are you going to do this on air? Or are you going to do it during the commercial?
I'll do the pickle on air.
The pickle is
the sandwich, or just
the pickle's marinated in it, right?
Yeah, the pickle is, in my opinion, hotter than the sandwich itself.
Okay, should I do the sandwich?
I think if you're going to do it, you might
do
as well
the
just
sandwich.
do the sandwich.
Okay, all right.
Or I think maybe from what Chris is saying, you should just do it during the break and give us a reaction.
I'll let you guys decide. If you want it on air, I'll do it on air. If they issue during the break, I'll do it during the break.
We'll get video of it during the break.
It will be video.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
How about that? Quickly here, obviously talking about spring practice, this note coming out yesterday, South Carolina's spring game, which is still happening compared to other teams around the country, not going to be televised. Instead, they're opting with the ESPN behind the scenes kind of encapsulating all of spring practice. So the only way to see the spring game is to be there in person. The only way to hear the spring game is to listen to it right here on 107.5 The Game. So not going to have the TV option this year, which if you are worried about tampering, at least cut some of it down, right?
Yeah, and I guess we're gonna have to get out the GC drone again and get some all 22 film there of it. Just kidding, Steve Fink. And then we, we'll be there. We'll have coverage. The game will be there. Gamecock Central will be there. But also, I feel like that's an incentive. Just go to the game if you can, if you're free.
Sure.
It's Friday night, which is different, and it is free. So,
yeah. I mean, that's my first thought. Not on TV, incentivized. Come on.
Yeah.
I know some of you are out of town. I get that.
And being on Friday, it's trickier if you're trying to come up from Charleston or from the upstate or something like that. So, but yeah, if you want to see it in person,
spend the night.
Spend the night. There you go. Want to see it in person? Do have to be there for it. Again, we'll have coverage for you. You guys will be on the call here on the game and provide plenty of insight in that. And that'll wrap up spring practice here in less than a month.
We're gonna, I think, know a lot more by that point, but we will not know everything, which is actually kind of exciting. I like how, there's going to be an evolution from now until then of, we have a lot more questions right now sitting here about this team. We'll have some more answers then, but a lot of meat will be left on the bone by that point. So, yeah, come on out to the spring game. Go ahead and make plans. April 18th.
April 18th, Friday night, 7 o'clock, 7:30 kick. There's not a kick, but it starts at
7:30.
7:30, I believe. And again, we'll have the coverage for you right here on the game. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Coming up next, halftime show. Myself, Terry Ford, and your Wednesday here on the game.
All right, temperatures are creeping back up, and so that means you need to make sure that your home's HVAC system is running at peak performance. And any time that